Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. I'm Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I'm joined by my co-host.
I'm Jason Harris, filmmaker, comedian, and geisha to the rich.
So true. That's you gotta be if you're gonna get funding for your films, right? You gotta do whatever the rich people want.
That hasn't worked yet.
Yeah, you keep at it. I think it's gonna happen for you.
Oh no. Why did I get this kimono if not for the making of the money?
Oh, beautiful. Yes, lots of kimonos in this film we're about to discuss. In this season of Awesome Movie Year, we are talking about the films of 1941. And we're here at our foreign film episode to talk about Ornamental Hairpin from Japanese filmmaker Hiroshi Shimizu. And Shimizu, a very prolific, renowned filmmaker in Japan, but not one that is as well known outside of Japan now or then, maybe a little more so now, but compared to Ozu, who we talked about in our 1953 season, and Kenji Mizoguchi, other filmmakers in Japan from this period whose work kind of spread worldwide and acclaim was worldwide, Shimizu mostly stayed in Japan. And so this is an interesting discovery, and I feel like his work has been discovered over the last decade, more so even by viewers in the US. So this was an interesting choice for us.
Lots of retrospectives at like film festivals throughout the world and what not, Josh. So yeah, it's hey, it's not Seven Samurai, but there is an ornamental hairpin.
There sure is an ornamental hairpin, as one would expect from this film. And I mean, the other interesting thing is, as we've had kind of as a theme for this season, this is right in the middle of World War II. We've talked about propaganda films. We've talked about very nationalistic films. A couple episodes ago, we had an Italian film that was supported by the fascist government. And here we are at a Japanese film. And this is not a propaganda movie, I wouldn't say, and is not necessarily, it's not about the war, but it is about characters living during the war and how life is. And so I think it's interesting that we have ended up, and this was not necessarily a plan, but we have ended up seeing films from the US and from the UK from that perspective of the war and living through it and the message they're conveying. And we've now seen two films from the other side, from Italy and from Japan, and looking at the pop culture that was being produced on both sides during this period.
Josh, as you said to me before the episode, all we needed was a German film to complete our Axis of Evil bingo card, right?
But yeah, it was just the Axis powers. I think the Axis of Evil was a George Bush thing much later.
So, well, in 30 years, we could do the UN voting block and pick movies from this year from the US, Russia, the Sudan, North Korea, whatever.
That's
so
good.
Belarus. But the most interesting point that you made, and it brings me back to rules of the game, is that it's not about the war, but the war permeates everything and all the perspectives and how people are living. And that is what I, think is what makes this a really interesting episode to get into.
Yeah, I mean, and I think we see that sometimes. You see that in American films of this period a lot as well, that are not necessarily about the war, but anything that takes place during this moment, the war is going on, and they talk about, how things are in the world. And I mean, we just did an episode on Sullivan's Travels, and that's, one of the things on the mind of that character who wants to make a serious film. It's like, the world is at war right now. We things are serious. And that's certainly something here, even though there are very few specific references to war or to what's going on beyond the borders of Japan, or even beyond this little resort town where the movie takes place.
And the resort town is kind of remote and off the grid, so to speak, right? It's so that in a way, that kind of bubble, that's what you get there. I think where we see it the most in US films, and obviously my favorite decade is the 70s in response to the Vietnam War.
Right. And I mean, we see it now, although, I mean, this is getting a little off track, but one of my fascinations has been like how much films about everyday life did not deal with the COVID pandemic, for example, now, but there were plenty that did. And I think, we'll see that more. And as we're living through a turbulent moment here in the US right now, I think we'll see more perhaps how films about, again, just about everyday life respond to how things like that are going. But certainly that's something on the mind of Shimizu here in this film. He wrote and directed the film based on a short story by Masuji Ibuse, who is another major Japanese pop culture figure, a very, very, very successful novelist. And
your boy.
Yeah, exactly. None of these people that I had been familiar with before, but Shimizu was someone, again, who I didn't really know about. But when we're researching this season and what might we talk about and looking at his filmography and seeing how prolific he was, and there are certainly films of his, and this is one of them, that have now gotten the acclaim and the attention in the US, but a lot of his films are still not really available to watch. This movie is on the Criterion channel and perhaps elsewhere and has been released on DVD. But, the print even that Criterion has is a bit rough. And I don't know that his films have gotten that same level of attention still. And because of that reason, this movie was not released in the US, unlike The Iron Crown, the Italian film that we talked about that did eventually get a US theatrical release in the 1940s after the end of the war. This movie, as far as I can tell, never got a theatrical release in the US and was not released in any form in the US until it was released on home video, maybe sometime in the 1990s. So I don't have any American reviews to quote on this. In Japan, it was released shortly before Japan entered into World War II officially, but they were already at war with China in the Sino-Japanese War. So that's kind of what is being referenced by the characters here. And our character, who is a soldier who is waylaid by his injury with the ornamental hairpin and has to stay at the resort. And one of the things that's kind of unspoken is that if he leaves, he's not only going to have to go back to Tokyo, but is probably going to have to go back to war. And so lingering at the resort makes sense.
You would think he would get an injury time out there.
Yeah, I mean, well, he clearly does. It's not that he is like gone AWOL or anything necessarily. He obviously is genuinely injured, but once he recovers from this injury, he's going to have to go back. So maybe he's going to slow roll his recovery a little bit, or maybe we want him to slow roll his recovery a little bit. So a couple quotes here from those filmmakers, the sort of better known Japanese filmmakers. Yasujiro Ozu said, "I can't shoot films like Shimizu." And Mizoguchi said, "People like me and Ozu get films made by hard work, but Shimizu is a genius." And Shimizu, clearly also a hard worker, given how prolific he was. I think he made 5 films in 1941 alone. And the one critic quote I do have here is from Japanese film critic Akira Shimizu, not related, who said, "Film stock is so precious in these times, yet Hiroshi Shimizu still comes up with such la-di-da stuff."
Get out of here. Other Shimizu with your nonsense. Like the Japanese people don't deserve a break from the reality of the hellscape they were living in with all these wars going on, right? So.
Yeah. And furthermore, as we're saying, it's not like this movie is ignoring the war and is giving you, it's not about the war, but is giving you the perspective of how are we going about daily life while this is around us. So I don't think it's la-di-da.
La-di-da-di-da. It's the Simuzi. Oh, Shimizu.
Way to spell there, buddy.
I blew it.
I know what he's doing, but yeah.
Shimizu is what I meant to say.
Good work there. So, I mean, even though he was a successful filmmaker in Japan, maybe this movie was less appreciated. I don't have box office figures. I don't have a lot of the usual context historically that I try to bring here, but this movie was, I mean, certainly he was a high profile filmmaker in Japan. If film stock was in short supply, he would have had to get, backing in order to make this film. And again, one of the 5 films that he made in 1941, and one of the handful of films that has reached beyond the borders of Japan. I was looking just out of curiosity, he's made over 150 movies, and you look at like his filmography on Wikipedia, for example, and I think like 9 of those movies have their own Wikipedia pages, are considered notable enough, and this is one of them. So for whatever that's worth.
There's a lot. I had over 160, a lot of lost films like Ozu, because that's silent error stuff. And, when you research like these actors, these are the cream of the crop because they're one of the main characters we saw in Tokyo Story, right? They're working with Ozu or Kurosawa or Shimizu or, any of the other great filmmakers that you mentioned there over and over again.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, these are some of the biggest stars in Japan. We should mention Kinuyo Tanaka plays Emi, the woman with the ornamental hairpin, the geisha who accidentally leaves this behind at this resort. And it is then, it injures the soldier, Takeshi Nomura, played by Chishū Ryu. And I was unclear exactly on what his injury was, because he's in the hot springs or whatever, where she's clearly dropped this hairpin, and he says, "Oh, I stepped on something," and it's the hairpin. And you think maybe he just kind of cut his foot, but then he has such a long recovery period, and he has difficulty walking. And I wondered if he had some sort of like nerve injury or something. It seems kind of serious.
Well, that's what I thought. He stepped on this thing and it pierced his, beyond just a cut. It fucked up his nerve in his foot or whatever. But I was confused because he did that and he was just like, "Ow." And I was like, "What, dude? That's it?" Like, if you step on something that sharp and it's piercing into your nerves, you're going to be screaming there.
Yeah. And then we never see a doctor in this film. We just get the owners of the inn who are very, very apologetic about his injury. And he's like, "Oh, no, don't worry about it. It's no big deal." And the professor character, the kind of cranky professor played by Tatsuo Saitō, is telling him, "Oh, you need to do something about this. This is unacceptable. This is not okay." And he's like, No, don't worry about it." And I mean, maybe there is a subtext there again of like, hey, I hurt myself on this hairpin, and means I won't have to go back and fight and die in a war.
Yeah.
But all of that is below the surface here.
Oh, or the subtext is that there's so much other crazy stuff going on in our country and our world that, I'm not really, this is minor in the grand scheme of things.
Right. And he definitely downplays it. But much of the movie involves his kind of slow efforts to recover and be able to walk. And he's trying to walk little distances and build up. I mean, it's like physical therapy, basically, even though we don't have any doctors in this film. And so Emi, the geisha, comes back from Tokyo to apologize, but really seemingly to escape her own life. And then she decides to stay at the resort there along with everyone else. We have this kind of community of people at the resort, including the professor. We've got this old man and his 2 grandsons. We've got this younger married couple, and they form this little kind of community of people all spending time together and getting to know each other and escaping their regular lives for this one summer, as they all talk about what will happen when we return to the city.
It's a regular grand Japanese hotel.
It is indeed. So obviously, I think none of us had seen this film or any Shimizu films. Dave, you watched one more though, right? You were really taken with Shimizu.
It was Ernest Goes to Japan.
Right.
Imagine if I had like beaten my Ernest record and watched like 11 of these. But no, yeah, I really like this. And so I had seen that Mr. Thank You is the most popular on Letterboxd. So I went to that one, and I really liked that one too. I thought they were both great.
Yeah, Criterion has a few of these, and that's from 1936, I believe.
Yes.
So it's earlier, pre-war stuff.
Is that another sweet 70-minute movie, Dave?
Yep, nice and short, really breezy, even lighter than this movie.
Yeah, I mean, this movie is kind of deceptively light, I think, right? We've got just these cast of wacky characters at this resort, and we've got this little subdued romance, but because of what's going on in the wider world, it's heavier.
Sure.
Than we realize, and especially when you get to the ending, the emotional toll on the characters. But it's all very subdued and below the surface, which I think maybe was something that frustrated Jason. But before that, anything else on the background of this film, Jason, you want to mention?
The real win were the friends they made along the way.
And that is true. In the case of this film, it actually is how that goes. So we'll come back and get into more of our general thoughts on Ornamental Hairpin. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 1941, we are talking about our foreign film pick, Ornamental Hairpin from Japan. And Jason, you were not super crazy about this.
Well, let's talk about the things I did like, because I know you guys like this movie more than me. One, great singular setting, right? It's all in this little resort. I love single setting movies, and I think he uses that setting really well. Two, I totally get why they're like, this guy's a genius. Like, look at the way he's using frames in the 40s, right? I referenced Grand Budapest, but like, there's some stuff where I'm like, oh, I could see this type of shot in like a Steve Zissou or something like that, right? There are some Wes Anderson-y type things here. This is really, really good camera work, not just with using it, but I love the way he fills the frame, Josh. There's so much stuff where there's like something going on in the background that you're supposed to focus on, but then you see like maybe Emmy's talking to someone or writing a letter on the phone. Meanwhile, in the foreground, the two little kids are playing whatever game, and he just did really good stuff with that. So technically, I was a big fan of this film. I didn't really connect with it from the story, but like, so even though I didn't give it a high rating, like it's a good low rating is what I'm going to say. Like, I mean, I would watch more, and I think like I understand why you guys liked it and also why he's regarded as so important.
Yeah, and I mean, I liked it. I didn't like it as much as Dave did, and I think like Tokyo Story that we talked about in our 53 season, and Ozu's films in general, it's this subdued, kind of quiet Japanese filmmaking style that still exists today in with filmmakers like Hirokazu Koreeda, who I love, and we also talked about in that Ozu episode. But you need to have the patience, and this is not a long movie, it's a short movie, but you do need to have the patience to let it play out, and you need to bring a bit of your own awareness to it. And I think also, Jason, I didn't emotionally engage with it as much. And especially when you get to the ending and you have, the final shot is like the emotional devastation that Emmy feels because she's now the only one left at this resort. And Nomura has gone back to Tokyo, and again, presumably has gone back to the army and possibly is now going to die in the war. And she's been left behind. And I understood the impact of it, but I didn't feel the impact as much, I think.
I think that's fair. That is a very striking final shot with the emotional swell there. Josh, I remember when we were covering Tokyo Story, I was complaining like the asshole that I can be sometimes, Josh, about like how repetitive it was. And you were like, no, this is like a circular functioning dialogue that keeps coming back and back and that's how I felt about this. Like, I was like, this is, in a way we're repeating like, okay, the old man and the other old man, are playing games, and one's frustrated with the other is diverting attention, and it becomes repetitive, but I don't think it was done in a lazy or sloppy way. That's just the stylistic choice of this type of filmmaker. And, I think that hampers me from connecting with it in some ways, but that's not a knock on the film.
Yeah. I mean, and I think the part of the repetitiveness too is to show you the way they're living
right
here at this resort, which on the one hand is maybe boring, but on the other hand is a relief from the stress of living in the city and from the stress of dealing with the war. And it is kind of a respite from that. And it is nice to get up every day and just have this safe, comfortable routine, I think, for a lot of these people.
Take away all the drama and incest and you're into White Lotus Japan right here.
I feel like the drama and the incest is like the essential element of the White Lotus is my impression of that.
Yeah, this season, the incest, the drama every season.
Yeah, not incest every season. Sure. No incest in this film, just to be clear. But I mean, we even have that moment where one of the kids is talking about how he has to write like a report or something for school about what he did over the summer. And he's like, oh, well, the summer's not over, but I already wrote it because we just do the same thing every day. And he rattles off his little routine, which he's complaining seemingly, but it sounds quite nice, actually.
Was that Jiro?
Yeah, I would Jiro or whichever one of the kids. He's not dreaming of sushi.
I wanted
different
him to,
guy.
though.
Yeah, but you have the two little kids, Jiro and Taro, who are the grandsons of this old man who's brought them there for the summer, and they are going to have to, of course, go back to school in the fall and go back to the city. But it's a nice escape for them too. And when they do that report, Nomura says, "Well, you have to focus on the things that were not the same every day." And I think that's maybe telling the audience something as well. Like, yes, we are focusing on the mundane here, but that makes the notable things stand out more when something happens, when Emi arrives or when Emi's friend arrives, when Nomura is injured or when he's finally able to take a walk from one tree to the other or whatever. That stands out more, even though that seems like kind of a mundane thing as well.
I mean, that's some of the most fun stuff is, when they're helping Nomura recover from his injury and they're like, you gotta, they're just giving him tasks. So you have to walk from this side of the field to the other. And it eventually becomes you have to walk up these steps and the kids are cheering him on. And Emi has conflicting emotions because obviously she wants him to recover. At the same time, she knows he's going to leave and it's going to be sad when he does recover. So I did like those sequences, not just from a story standpoint, but that's what I'm talking about, like with his usage of setting, like really, really good stuff there.
Yeah, although I don't know if you want two rambunctious little kids in charge of your physical recovery from injury. Because
you take what you can get out of these.
At one point, we go from like walk across the field or walk from this tree to this other tree to like walk across this rickety, narrow log bridge over a running river, and it seemed very dangerous.
Josh, I mean, you don't understand Eastern medicine clearly, but no. Hey, it was, and didn't like they had the two blind masseurs do it after that, right?
Yeah, and those blind guys and the kids are just like, oh yeah, watch out for the curve right there or whatever. I didn't understand, and maybe this is something I should have looked up or tried to find out. Like, why were all the masseurs blind?
I don't know that either. So.
Yeah, I don't know. And also the massages did not really look very good.
Yeah, they were kind of just like poking at them. But I wondered, like,
I need a massage right now. Go on, Josh.
In the opening of the film, when Emi first arrives, she's with this like tour group with all her friends or fellow geishas, I guess, I don't know. And they're very rambunctious and they come into the hotel and they all want massages. So they get all the masseurs and the professor is complaining. He's always complaining about things. He's complaining that they've booked all the masseurs and he can't get a massage. And the masseurs come into the room where all the geishas are. And at that point, I was confused and I didn't realize that they were blind. I thought they were all just like closing their eyes because like they're not supposed to look at the women, even though they're fully clothed. I thought that was maybe some sort of cultural thing, but I was wrong. And they are blind, but I don't know why.
Josh, if you got a massage from a masseur and it moved, you would just accept it, right?
I was not thinking about that per se, but I suppose that's all you can do. But they're not even, as you said, like Dave or say, like the way the massages look, they're not even close enough for that to happen, really.
Oh, man. The last time I got a massage in Chinatown, it was at a Thai massage. Starfoot, I think, with Foss. So there's this little Thai lady, and she's beating me up, and she gets on my back, like to walk on my back, and she's hanging from like these rods or like bamboo poles from the ceiling, and she's just stomping me.
Hell yeah.
I mean, hell yeah, hypothetically. In reality, I felt beaten up after that massage.
Did it make you feel looser afterwards?
I don't think that was the best one, but now that we're talking about it, if you guys want a Groupon, a couples massage, I'm down to go with either of you boys. So,
Yeah, I'm not really. I don't like. I get tenser with some stranger touching me. I feel like so it doesn't work for me.
My Stephanie, Scarlett's mom, was the same. I bought us a couples massage once, and she was just really uncomfortable with like someone else, kind of touching her. I, on the other hand, bring them all. Give me all the hands at once.
Yeah, all the feet, all the Thai ladies walking all over you. Yeah,
we got it with a little more technique next time, maybe. So
fair enough. Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like I should have. I don't know if that's a thing. Is there's a tradition of blind masseurs in Japan or something, or it was just a quirk of this film? I don't know, but it was a little odd.
I don't know either. I mean, you have so many questions about it. You should have researched it, Josh.
I really should have. I didn't. I mean, again, I'm not even sure how I would have started with that and if I would have been able to find anything on it. But yeah, I can't.
I mean, you could have just Google searched it pretty
Blind massage therapists have stronger senses of touch.
Oh,
they can find
awesome.
they can find trigger points easy.
No, there you
I
go.
need them. I need them all.
Yeah, maybe
I want to be
maybe-
triggered.
Maybe you need to find a blind massage therapist, Jason, and for your next massage.
I will take any massage therapist, however many senses they have that are of full usage or not. I'm into it. Let's go.
Okay. So, I mean, one other odd thing that this is, I think, just more of a cultural thing is there's sort of a running bit how the professor is always chastising Hiroyasu, the younger man, for like asking his wife's opinion about stuff or even just mentioning what his wife thinks of something. And I was not sure if it was presented as like a shortcoming of the professor. I thought, oh, maybe this is part of him being like overbearing and cranky or whatever. But I think it's presented as like good advice. Like, oh yeah, you know, he's now learned, like later in the film, he realizes like, don't ask the wife about your opinion on stuff. And she doesn't seem to be bothered by it. So that was a little odd to me.
I think that's why Dave's watched more of these movies, because he's instituted that policy with Gina and it's working out really well for him.
Yeah. Absolutely. Wait, which way is that policy working? I'm confused here. I'm not sure.
Josh, this professor, is it just that he couldn't sleep because of the snoring and all the commotion
he was the
going
one
on?
snoring.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it just seemed like he always had a problem with something going on in his room or the noise coming from the other rooms. And, you know, that there was another good example of that where I think they were playing board game or chess or checkers in the foreground.
They play Go. Yeah, I think is what he does. Yeah.
And then you see all that commotion going on in the background. I love that. I just think it's really good use of your frame.
Right. I mean, and I think the thing about the professor is that he complains about everything, but of course, he really wants to be part of this little community. And he's so happy when they say, oh, let's form our little committee and you can be the chairman. And he's like, oh, really? Me? I'll be the chairman? Okay. And he complains about the old man, the grandfather, always wanting to play Go with him, like, oh, this again. But of course, he always does it. And, it helps him bond with the guy. And, he shares his room when it's necessary because all these people show up at the inn and our main characters are all getting like a discounted rate to stay there. So they have to cram into a couple rooms together. So, I mean, I think that's meant to be part of his characterization, that he's this curmudgeon who's kind of showily protesting about how annoyed he is, but really he likes spending time with these people.
I think you're right. I mean, you could see at the end where they're like, the woman says, but we all get back to Tokyo. Let's make sure we continue to meet, you could tell the professor would probably be like, all right. And then inside he'd be like, goody, goody, goody.
Right. And when she says that too, he's like, oh, can I still be the chairman? And they're like, yes, you can. And he's really happy about that. So, and they do meet, right? We see later in the film when some of them have left and Emmy is still there, she gets a letter that they have had their first little committee meeting in Japan, in Tokyo. So they've followed up on it.
And, when we talked about the Iron Crown earlier this season, I talked about how I did not like the usage of text to move blocks along. I did think that was well done here. With the letters.
we get letters and we get a telegram from Emmy when she's going to show up to issue her apology for leaving the hairpin behind to injure Nomura. And it's an effective storytelling technique. And I think it's weirdly jarring at one point late in the film when we get that letter and we realize, oh, half the characters have left and we didn't see them say goodbye. But that's kind of how this goes, right? They form this makeshift community and then their time ends and they leave.
Yeah, and they say they're going to hang out and then never speak to each other ever again.
But sometime. They did.
They did.
They did hang out one time.
We have missed an opportunity to do this episode on location at a spa. That would have been really nice, guys.
Yeah, or while getting massages, perhaps.
Oh, let's do it.
So. Yeah. So, I mean, do we think, right, the committee has met, but will Emmy and Nomura ever see each other again?
We're rooting for it, Josh. But, this is, you look, Japanese, right? Stoicism, perhaps repressed emotions. Maybe there were just two spa ships crossing in the spa night and they've missed it. You could tell Emmy really has that affection for Nomura, but I think Nomura's a little kind of aloof to that and not necessarily recognizing that as much as we would like.
Right. Is he oblivious, or is he just holding back again because he's going to have to go off to war? He doesn't want to form these attachments. I mean, it's interesting when before Emmy shows up, but they get her letter saying, "Hey, I apologize and I'm going to come to apologize in person." And the professor is really fixated on the idea that she better be attractive. and and he's like, "Oh, Nomura is going to be so crushed if she's not attractive." And he is invested in this in a way that Nomura is not, or is not outwardly invested in it.
I mean, this professor is telling the guys don't ask the ladies' opinions, and they better be pretty. He gets it, right, Josh?
Yeah, he's the one to emulate here. He knows what he's talking about. I mean, there's also a lot going on with Emmy's position as a geisha. I mean, clearly one of the reasons that she's come to the resort is not just to apologize, but she's
trying
running
to
away.
Leave her life.
Yeah, from her patron, I guess, or whatever, who is, I don't know if he's abusive, but he definitely is not someone she wants to be with anymore.
It's a longing. She has a longing for a different life.
Right. And she shows up at this resort and she realizes this is how I want to live. And her friend eventually comes to try and retrieve her and is unable to convince her. So I feel like that's another thing, that if you knew more about that culture, or if, Japanese audiences in 1941 would have, there be some more resonance to that storyline.
Well, we always talk about time and place and setting, and it's, obviously tough for us to know all that, but there was plenty here that I do think we were able to correlate with.
Yeah. So Dave, you love this movie. What did you love about it?
Yeah, I was trying to actually figure out why I loved it when I didn't like Tokyo Story, which we covered. And I mean, obviously a classic, but, and it definitely has a similar vibe. But I think it's really just the characters. And I just really connected with the way that these characters are written, and the way that they all kind of gel together, and all these different story threads. I just found all of them interesting. There wasn't a single part of it that I didn't find interesting. And put together and kind of going back and forth between them all, I just thought it was a really great little thing. And I thought the old guy was, the professor was really funny. One of my favorite parts of the movie that you guys didn't mention is when the guys are all sitting around complaining about the food, but then saying, well, but we do have a discount, and each dish, like, oh, but that food's terrible. Yeah, but we do have a discount. But the fish is terrible. We got a discount. Some of that stuff is just really great. But then, yeah, the emotional story between, the main guy who gets hurt and the geisha, all that is wonderful too. I just think it's a lot of really good parts that all kind of actually add up to something more.
The professor, Josh, am I correct? That's the dad in Tokyo Story, right?
Yeah, he was in Tokyo Story. Yeah. And I mean, I can see, and I was mixed on Tokyo Story, but Tokyo Story is slower and quiet. I mean, this is a slow, quiet movie, but Tokyo Story is slower and quieter and maybe heavier. Whereas perhaps in part because this movie is so short, it does move along, right? Yeah. I mean, the character's always doing something, even if it's this repetitive routine. It's like, we're doing the laundry, we're trying to help Nomura walk, we're playing Go, we're having dinner, we're having a snoring contest. Dave, I know you enjoyed the little snoring contest between the grandfather and the professor. So, I mean, it's livelier, I guess is the word that I'm looking for, maybe, than Tokyo Story is.
I think that's fair. Absolutely. And I think lively is a really great word for the movie, because there's just so much going on with these characters. There's so much life here, and there's a big culture difference, obviously a big time difference too to all of this, but it really kind of puts you in there, and you just kind of feel like you're hanging out in this.
Yeah. I mean, the time is this is a time when Japan obviously had less contact with Western countries and things like that. There's one point where they're talking about Emmy and they say, oh, so she's not the type of woman to wear Western clothes or whatever. Mm. And even the men, they're all dressed in what we think of as a sort of traditional Japanese style that you could imagine characters in a Japanese movie set decades or even centuries earlier would be dressed similarly and not the way that we would typically see Japanese characters dressed in a movie made now. So, I mean, I think that there's more distance time-wise when we look at a movie like this versus when we look at American movies from this period where it seems maybe a bit closer to us.
Absolutely.
That's why he's the pro, Dave, because of the insights that me and you just don't have.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you guys had plenty of insights here, I think. So, and Dave brought the info about the blind masseurs, so that was important.
That was important.
Yeah.
So should we rate this movie out of 5 ornamental hairpins, I guess, maybe?
That's a good idea to do it. Look, I gave it 2. It's like I rewatched Tokyo Story, which I had originally given a 2 and moved it to a 2.5. I know 2 is low and it sounds low, and that's just because I just didn't connect with it, but it's probably worth more than that. So I'll give it. That's me stepping on 2 ornamental hairpins.
I like, I feel like both I and our listeners appreciate when you scream in episodes. It's always good when we can get that in.
I am here for you.
Yeah. I give it 3 ornamental hairpins. I think I liked it more than you did, Jason, but I did feel a remove from it, so I couldn't be as enthused as Dave has been, but it's good, and I wish I had the chance to watch Mr. Thank You, because I'd be curious to explore more of Shimizu's work. So 3 hairpins for me. Dave, how do you rate this?
I'm giving it 4 hairpins over here.
Wow.
At that point, are they even ornamental anymore, Josh?
Right, they're just holding the hair
point.
together. Yeah, that's what you got to do.
I feel like I could use that many. So
yeah, maybe so. We should get you one of those, Dave. We'll come back and talk about the legacy of ornamental hairpin. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 1941, we are talking about our foreign film pick, Ornamental Hairpin, from writer-director Hiroshi Shimizu. And as we said, he was a major figure in Japanese cinema during this period. He was incredibly prolific, made over, Jason, I think you said 160 films during a period from the 1920s to the 1950s. But legacy-wise, his films have taken a long time to permeate beyond Japan. The 1988 retrospective at the National Film Theatre in London was something that I found mentioned multiple times as one of the first opportunities that people in the Western world had to really see his films. And that seemed to have kind of started the momentum for some home video releases in the 1990s, some showcases at film festivals. And of course, now Criterion has this collection of a few of his films that they had released on DVD as well as have on their channel right now. But I feel like it wouldn't surprise me to see greater appreciation of him alongside figures like Ozu and Mizoguchi, especially if some of his other more difficult to find films got restored, into the future.
If anyone could do it, it's the Criterion people, Josh. What a streaming service.
It is, yes, a streaming service and a physical media release and all of that. So, Dave, you watched the one other film. Are you planning to watch more Shimizu?
I would watch more Shimizu. Yeah, I really liked Mr. Thank You. It feels like a companion piece to this, and it's more interesting characters in just a slightly kind of different situation. I also wondered if they were connected, although there's not a lot of info out there because they do talk about a resort up the road where the bus is traveling. So, but yeah, no, I would definitely watch more.
What did you give Mr. Thank You out of how many?
I gave it 4 bus rides down a bumpy road.
Oh, thank you, mister.
Yeah, I would. And those films, I don't know if all of his films are short, but the ones that Criterion has are all 70-ish minutes long. So easy to watch. And I'm sure worth checking out. As we said, the actors in this film, also major figures in Japanese cinema, very, very, very prolific, big stars. Kinuyo Tanaka, who plays Emi, was in 250 plus films, worked with Mizoguchi on a number of his films, is famous for that, including Ugetsu, which is, I think, a movie that we almost covered in 1953.
We did
when we talked about Tokyo Story, but another extremely famous Japanese film. She was Shimizu's ex from a period like 15 years or something earlier. But so obviously they remained friends and worked on this film together. Later in her career, she was the second ever Japanese woman to direct a film. And I think Criterion actually had a collection of her films as a director at one point as well, although I haven't seen any of those.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Also in Tokyo Story, Josh, the first woman to direct in Japan was Tezuka Sakane. Have you ever seen any of her movies?
I have not. I have not seen any of her films, and I have not seen any of Tanaka's films as a director either. So, nor have I seen Ugetsu, which I'm sure of all of these is the one that I should see. It's an incredibly important film.
Josh, why do you hate women directors so much?
Well, that's Mizuguchi, who's not a woman, but I'd be open to watching all of these.
I know. Okay, that's fair. She was a legend right there. It's fun looking at these Japanese legends, and it's like she made 600 films in 16 years, right? You know. So, also Ryu, Chishū Ryu, who played Nomura, was an actor and director. Appeared in more than 200 films. Worked with Ozu, and then some English language films, including My Geisha and Lord Jim.
Yeah, he worked with Paul Schrader and Wim Wenders. Ryu, I mean, you joked about that period, but he worked all the way through the 1980s. I mean, he was in Schrader and Wim Wenders films there later in the 1980s. So he had a very, very long career. But yeah, I mean, Tatsuo Saitō, who plays the professor, he was in 200 plus movies, and he worked from the 20s through the 60s, was on television, was also director. So, I mean, all of these actors just like working constantly across decades.
Sakamoto, who played the spa owner, might have the record of this group with over 300 films. But like I said, it's really interesting because like you look them up and it's like worked with Ozu 50 times, worked with all the biggest directors they work with over and over again.
Right, Kurosawa, Mizuguchi, etc. All these iconic Japanese filmmakers that we know. I was interested in Masuji Ibuse, the author who wrote the short story that this is based on. Also very prolific, very well known in Japan. And his novel Black Rain, his most famous book, which was about the bombing of Hiroshima, was made into a film in 1989 as well. So I feel like all of these people, you know, huge in Japanese pop culture, less so outside of Japan.
I mean, much like the people of the resort themselves. Huge at the resort in Japan, not much outside of it. Josh, do you have what would you recommend? By the way, Black Rain, I when I think of Black Rain, I'm thinking of the Ridley Scott movie.
Film.
Yeah,
it's a different movie.
It's confusing.
It's a different movie.
But you know, we like these movies that take place in single setting resorts. I mentioned Grand Budapest. Dave, you and I love One Crazy Summer. Josh, there was that one that you and I watched together, the Greta Gerwig one on that small town.
The Dish and the Spoon? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, that's a good one.
So I like these things, anything from Forgetting Sarah Marshall to, like I said, freaking Blue Crush, awesome. Things like that. So.
You know what I was thinking about too is you were talking about the war happening, outside. The Banshees of Inisherin. It's kind of a similar idea there.
Big fan.
I thought of, the setting, the very specific setting of the inn adjacent to a river. I just happened to watch another Japanese film called River from last year by Junta Yamaguchi that I loved, and it's a time loop sci-fi movie, but it's set in this small mountain resort next to a river, and it has a character who is a cranky writer who is always complaining about stuff. Nice. And it really made me think of this film, and I wondered if that if Ornamental Hairpin was an influence on Yamaguchi, even though that movie is about the characters are stuck in a 2-minute time loop. But a lot of what they do in that time loop is it's about, there's a romantic longing between two characters, and there's the cranky writer who complains, and there's all the sort of community of this handful of people who are staying at this resort who come together. So I love that movie, and I feel like I wouldn't have thought of that connection necessarily, but watching this, I thought it must have been, and they're both Japanese films. So I recommend that movie to certainly River, and as well as Yamaguchi's first film, Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes. So good stuff from Japan now.
Let's do it, baby.
So anything else you want to say about the legacy of this movie, Jason?
Make sure if you go to a spa, there are no ornamental hairpins sticking up from the ground.
That is true. I did like too the scene, right? The innkeeper is like apologizing profusely, and Nomura is saying, "Oh, don't worry about it." I feel like, in a modern American context, Nomura would be filing a lawsuit.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, you can't blame him for that. I mean, if you get stuck and get nerve damage for stepping on something that in a place that's supposed to be safe, I could see litigating that.
Yeah, I suppose so. But that's not what they were doing in 1940s Japan.
Nah.
They were just apologizing to each other and bowing. That's how it went.
So, good analysis.
Thank you. That is Ornamental Hairpin. And that is this episode of Awesome Movie Year. Poke us with your ornamental hairpins online on social media.
That's how we want to be poked. I'm Jason Harris Comedy, or Jay Harris Comedy on all the socials. Go for Jason on Letterboxd. Eat This Comedy. We got a whole summer series in Las Vegas. Come see a show, have a great dinner. The trivia party going strong. And by the time this is released, every Sunday at Jimmy Kimmel's Comedy Club, the Jason Harris Power Hour with me, Jason Harris.
That's a good person to host that.
That's why I took the gig. I saw the name of the show and I'm like, hey, I should do that. Yeah. I don't host it, but it is my show. So.
Okay. That's you can find our things at awesomemovieyear.com, at Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and Instagram. I am at joshbellhateseverything.com with some old stuff, at Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook, at Signal Bleed on Blue Sky and on Letterboxd. And if you're on Letterboxd and you watch this movie or any of the movies we talk about on the show, tag your review Awesome Movie Year. We would love to know what you think. I did see recently someone watched Chungking Express and tagged us in that. So thank you very much for that.
I'm up for a rewatch of that.
It's a good film. And check out our producer, David Rosen's awesome podcast, Piecing It Together.
Check out Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on social media at Piecing Pod, and join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces. It's a nice little fun retreat out in the middle of nowhere.
In the middle of the wars on Facebook.
Yeah, all of the high quality internet discourse that we want to escape from. So, Jason, what's in our next episode?
Josh, you might have noticed about 12 seasons ago, we added an animation category. So we're going to be going to that next. It's a film called Dumbo. It's about an elephant, and you won't believe the ears on this guy.
Wow. So tune in next time for Dumbo. And thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.